gentlemen, we have ladies golf literati on this On the Mark podcast. And there she is, very smiley. If you're watching on YouTube, it's Kellie Stenzel. Kellie, welcome to the On the Mark show. How are you?
Hey, Mark, I'm really excited to be with you here today. So thanks for having me. We'll have some fun.
Are you kidding? I mean, look, I'm a girl dad. I have two daughters. One's a tennis player, one is a golfer. Used to be under duress, but now she's getting into this. So this is completely self-serving for me and all our audience around the world. It's a thrill to have you.
That's so great. How old are your daughters? And I have a son who's 14 who has played all the sports, but seems to be kind of leaning toward golf. And I always told him, like, I don't care what you play, just play something. So it seems to be golf, which is great.
Well, right now, because this podcast lives in the internet. So in 2023, my eldest Isabel is 16. She has a golf swing that looks like it fell out of heaven, if anyone follows me on Instagram. My littlest is
Nice.
feisty and a fast little tennis player. And golf has always kind of been part of who we are, and they've done everything, but golf is sort of becoming, I wouldn't say a passion point, but it's certainly growing with Isabel.
That's so nice. Yeah. And it's definitely captive time. My dad was a golfer, so I spent a lot of time with him. So that kind of captive time with your children is very valuable and fun. I love it.
Okay, then for me and all the other golfing dads listening to this, before we introduce you, share some gold. Would you help us with a little advice for bringing up young ladies who might be in the game?
I will. And listen, I was different. I played a lot of sports, but I loved golf. I didn't really need any coercing. But what I do find with young ladies is that they don't tend to love golf for whatever reason. It isn't like a first passion.
It's
So
so
this might
solo, don't you think? I mean, it's just singular on your own game.
I don't know, but I'll tell you what I tell people, and it might sound a little bit controversial, but I really mean it. If you have a young daughter who doesn't love golf and they have something that they'd like to do or something that they want, I would say go ahead and bribe them. Go ahead and bribe them with that thing that they want if they'll take a couple of golf lessons every year. Because here's what I see happen, and I've seen it over and over. I taught in the Hamptons at Atlanta Golf Club for 17 summers. And kind of as the female instructor, I ended up with a lot of the daughters of members, and they would drop them off and say, make sure you work on their short game. And I would make sure that it was fun, and I would make sure that they had good fundamentals. And then in almost all cases, what happened later in life when they got through high school and they went to college and they became young business women, they would come back and they'd be really good. And they would say first to their parents, and then when they ran into me occasionally, I'm so glad I learned to play. It is such a tool for life and friendships and business. So for parents of young ladies, like I said, I think it's a little controversial, but bribe them with whatever you need to get them to take a few lessons. So later in life, they are good. And it is a huge opportunity.
Okay, I need some kudos from the top 100 instructor, top 50 ladies golf teacher with golf for women. Um, Gas money. We were on the range the other day, and I said to Isabel, who's now just turned 16 and driving, I'm like, okay, you see that target there, 50 yards? I'm like, for everyone you can get in there, I'll give you 20 bucks. She
There you
holds
go.
the first one. Okay. Thing when I'd quickly drop 20 to like $5. Eventually, when I'm $35 down, I'm like, okay, enough of this. You can go and find something else to do.
That's so good. See, you knew it. You knew it by instinct. That'll pay off. And somewhere down the road, they are going to be so thankful.
I don't know if it's instinct. I think it's that case of, necessity is the mother of invention.
Exactly.
All right. I'm a golf teacher deep down. You're one of the greats in the game. Tell the global audience about Kellie Stenzel. How did you get to where you are, please?
I started young. I grew up in Western New York. I was originally from Buffalo, so I'm a lifelong Buffalo Bills fan. And then my father was a car dealer. So I grew up in a very small town in Western New York called Geneva, New York. And I like to joke, it was a great place to be from because the people were really nice. There was a lot of good golf in the summer, but it was so cold. I just didn't like the cold. So I played a lot of sports, but I preferred golf. And I was lucky enough to go to Furman University in Greenville, South Carolina, which was kind of a perfect transition for me from Western New York. We had a really good golf team and I had to work hard. Like I got to Furman and I was on the team, but I didn't have a scholarship. But I played with a lot of good players. I played with Dottie Pepper. I played with Kathy Hart. I
Different.
played with
Yeah.
Maggie Will. I played with a lot of good players at Furman. And I had to work really hard. My senior year, we finished second in the nation. I had earned a full scholarship and even better, had an amazing education, but I did get a lot better playing wise while I was there. So I decided to try to play professionally. So the first summer, I graduated, I played the Futures Tour back then and did okay, but found that I just didn't love the tournaments and I didn't love the locations. So my friend Kathy Hart and I, we kind of jumped ship. And I'll qualify that, you being South African. So we were scheduled to play in Europe that summer, which was amazing and fun. And we did pretty decently. So we left the Futures Tour and we went over to South Africa to play the Ladies South African Tour for about, it was like a month and a half. And that was like the greatest thing ever. The people were so nice. We had a ball. We were there, 2 winters in a row, but I played professional golf and I wasn't quite good enough for the LPGA and I didn't love the mini tours here. So I played every foreign tour known to women, Europe, South Africa, Asia, Australia, Korea, played everywhere. And then started teaching. And I just found that teaching, even when I didn't know what the heck I was doing, and that is definitely how I started, I could still make people better.
Yeah.
And it was really fun. And it just really suited my personality, like helping people and watching them get better and watching them improve. And like the satisfaction that I got was almost to this day was as much, if not more than they get out of it. I get a total kick out of people getting better.
Mm-hmm.
So I got a job at a private club here in Jupiter. I don't know what I was thinking. I don't know why I didn't. Somebody should have been telling me what to do. So I just got my golf clothes and just got into security gates and went to get a job. So I got a job as a starter at a private club down here in Jupiter called Admiral's Cove. And eventually I worked my way from the starter to teaching.
Mm-hmm.
And I loved that. And I did quite well with it. But once again, Mark, I'll tell you, I was faking it. I was teaching them what a lot of new teachers teach, which was what I was doing, which had nothing to do with probably what they needed.
You know what? I need to interrupt you here because this is so refreshingly honest. And I had this conversation with the golf instructor because I'm a golf teacher deep down. And I'm like, almost nowadays, it seems like a lot of players who don't make it, you get yourself a launch monitor and one or other two, digital paraphernalia, and the next thing you're a golf swing expert. And I'm so glad because what I know about you and what I've read about you, and I love the books and I love the Amazon, video series that you have out. We'll talk about that. But you say you didn't really know what you were doing, but you bring a real playing emphasis to what you do. And there's so many golfers I think are kind of losing the forest for the trees when they're trying to fix golf swings and just not play the game properly. Yes?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that I was lucky when I was just beyond Admiral's Cove. I went to work. I kind of did all I could do at Admiral's Cove. I ran Ladies' Day. That almost killed me. That's when I decided I needed to be a full-time teacher. And I went to work for Mike Adams.
Mhm.
And that was like kind of a master's in learning golf instruction. And I'll tell you a quick story about my interview with Mike. He watched me give a golf lesson. And this kind of confirms what I said. He said, well, I can tell that you've been doing a lot of babysitting, but I need a female and teacher, and you're good with students. So I'm going to hire you.
That sounds
And
so much like Mike,
yeah,
yeah, I've taught golf since 1996. Okay, so I'm dating myself. And I've been around. But whenever I'm around Mike, you're like, this guy is like on the Mount Rushmore of golf instruction. And you got to be so smart with what you say because not like he's lying in wait, but he's listening very careful to what you're having to say.
oh yeah. I was just with Mike last week. We did a corporate event out in Colorado. I still spend a lot of time with Mike. We do a lot of work together. But I also would say they had this awesome teaching series at PGA National for PGA members. And I got like Chuck Cook really early, and he talked about what he looked at with club face and setup, and Craig Shanklin was there. They had this just like amazing group of teachers kind of cycling through.
Yeah.
So that really kind of made a huge difference. And I felt like kind of once I spent a few years working with Mike, that gave me, not that I don't continue to learn every day, I do. I'm lucky I get to be around a lot of amazing teachers and I try to suck it all up. But once I spent a few years working with Mike, and to this day continue, and that's been a few years, I feel like my ability to assess cause and effect, because it was a golf school atmosphere where we had 36 to 40 students 2 times a week. So you had to be fast and you had to figure out what was the one thing causing the other problems. And once you got pretty good at that, like teaching became pretty easy and fun. So I've just been really lucky to be around a lot of great teachers. And I just try to make it crazy simple. Like I might see all the complicated stuff and all the problems, but it's got to be simple.
Amen, sister. I mean, think about this, right? How, and our podcast is an example of this. I mean, the goal for me behind this podcast was being a young kid from South Africa. I learned from Golf Digest and I learned from the books I could get my hands on and our club professional kind of thing. But, I always wanted to feel like I had to know more. And then I get to the States and I meet all these folks. And now I'm thinking of the kids over in South Africa or wherever they might be. And to get to introduce them to folks like yourself, I think it's crucial. But the entire journey is now, because of the podcast and all the stuff on social media, on YouTube and stuff, it's certainly getting overcomplicated in an attempt, I feel like, for people to separate themselves. But where you come from, that's where the real wisdom is, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think the problem is there's so much information out there. It's the challenge for somebody who's just trying to find information online is kind of matching the correction to what their problem is. I mean, that's maybe the missing piece that people have to be really careful, like make sure that the correction that you're making even matches your mistake. Because if it doesn't, you can make yourself worse.
Yeesh. Think about that. I call them grill room golf tips or Advil for the golf swing. Everyone knows just enough to be dangerous, and everyone's likely to hit a few bad shots. Then, the all-knowing friend swoops in, whoever it is, and next thing you're adding fuel to a raging fire.
Yeah, I see that. You see like the online forums where there's a lot of amateurs. There's several, like on Facebook, women's amateur platforms, and somebody will post a question. And I love to look through the answers because most of them are just other amateur golfers giving wrong answers. So, it's, like 95, maybe even higher percent of those suggestions are wrong. Like, why am I slicing it? Oh, you're holding it too tight. Well, that's like not likely, to be honest with
Go
you,
ahead.
but yeah, good luck. Yeah.
Okay. Well, let's bring truth, shall we, Kelly? You've authored 3 books. You've got this cool series that it's available on Amazon. I glanced at it, and I think it's very cool. The first one is Learning a Golf Swing for a Lifetime, which me, 53, I'm sort of feeling things a bit. So you've got to have something that lasts a little bit. And then there's a short game to lower scores. Now, I want to start there because I don't care who you are, and I work on the PGA Tour. And everyone will say to you, look, strokes gained off the tee, that's where you separate yourself. I agree. But if you can't get good at shot number 3, I'm sorry, you can drive the thing like King Kong and never make low scores. Am I right? Are you feeling me over here?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I'll kind of bring it back to my young son again. He hits the ball really well. Like he really hits the ball, but his short game is kind of been his shortcoming. And now all of a sudden he's realized if you don't chip and pitch the ball pretty well and you don't putt the ball pretty well, you're not going to score well and you're not going to keep up with the kids down here in South Florida. That's for sure.
All right. The folks can find the 2 series on Amazon. Amazon Prime, correct?
Yes, Amazon Prime Video.
Amazon Prime, you search Kellie Stenzel, you will find it. Now, I want to just kind of tease it a little bit with you bringing a couple insights. Two of the tips, maybe 2 of the nuggets, whatever it is from the series, and let's help people out. And then if you want more, they can go and get the series. So kick us off. What's number 1 to improving your short game?
Yeah, when I teach short game, and these are targeted toward women, but they certainly can be applied to all golfers. That's absolutely for sure. I just think the terminology is just horrible. Like, what's the difference between a chip? What's the difference between a pitch? And I don't think people even understand that. So when I put these together, I really tried to make sure I was very clear and orderly in what I was doing. So I almost always start with an order of priority. And I do this when I teach as well. Putt whenever you can putt, chip or bump and run, which to me is the same thing, just as different terminology, and when you can't putt, and pitch, go up, up, up and over only when you have to. And that's really important, especially because women or a lot of country club golfers, they don't love to hit the ground. So if I know you probably can't relate as such a good player and out there watching the PGA Tour, but so many golfers just are afraid to hit the ground and make a mess.
I'm going to stop you right away, okay? Because I play minimally now. I used to be decent back in the day. Now I'm 53 and fabulous and hanging on for dear life. I There are shots around the greens. Let's say not even your basic chip shot, because I'm with you. Always go with a flatter face you can.
Yep.
You're improving your odds. In fact, on social media yesterday, Greg Chalmers, who is like a wizard around the greens, just did a test where he went with lob wedges, 10 balls, and 5 irons. And the dispersion of his 5 irons was closer than the dispersion with his lob wedges. This is a PGA Tour winner.
Wow, that's interesting.
But I digress. So I go with a straighter face. It makes life easier. Your bad one's less likely to be disastrous. But then you put me on a tightish lie with some sort of lofted wedge, and I can feel the hair on the back of my neck kind of raising up, and there's these things swimming through my head going, oh, it's turning bad in a hurry. And then the next thing, this reaction to it is this flinchy, horrible, lack of rhythm lurch at the golf ball. And oftentimes I'm sort of happy to have the thing sort of 10, 15 feet away.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I was just, like I mentioned, I was just in Colorado and I had the wedge station. So I took them from chipping to pitching, and pitching, they had to go up and over the bunker.
Mm-hmm.
Chipping, all the shots were safe. I wasn't worried about my students killing anybody. And then the pitch shot up and over the bunker, they're hitting it in the trees and in the bunker. And listen, that's normal. That doesn't mean they were bad. That just shows you that the stroke of a chip is that much lower maintenance than a pitch. And when I teach each of these shots, I like to try to build in insurance, and the insurances are different. And it's really important that that's differentiated. So when a golfer is chipping the kind of their lower and running shot, they need to have their upper body slightly target side. And the reason why that's really important is that guarantees that the club will hit the ground after the ball. That's the insurance that the bottom of your arc will happen in the right place.
Yeah.
Now, the pitch shot, the insurance is different. The pitch shot is that the bottom of the club is rounded. It's called bounce. And when you set this club properly on its bottom, that the leading edge is higher. It's actually off the ground compared to the trailing edge. It's like that rounded bottom sits on the ground. And if you know how to set that club properly, if you don't lean the shaft and you don't close the face, you can bang the heck out of the ground and that club won't dig. And if you know the club won't dig, you're not going to be afraid to hit the ground. So that's another reason why I like to kind of divide them in two, is because the insurance that each will work is different, but really important.
Amen. I want to camp there a little bit and build on that, because I would advocate, and I'd love your insight, that when it comes to the pitch shot and they're going to the more lofted club, the wedge or whatever the case might be, first off, I think they're going way too lofted. I mean, I've been fortunate to spend a lot of time around Larry Myers, who arguably authored the greatest pitch shot of all time at the Masters when he holed out.
Amazing. Yeah. Crazy.
His entire career, he never used a 60-degree wedge. The most lofted wedge he had in his bag was 56. And the same thing with Seve Ballesteros. Now, he was in the era before the 60 arrived, but I find so many club golfers going to their most lofted wedge, then this thing's not very powerful. Then they try and power it up. So they lean that shaft to your point, and then you're taking away this club's best characteristic, its insurance. Are you feeling me here?
Yeah, 100%. Absolutely. And listen, unless you're really high club head speed golfer, you don't need a 60.
Yeah.
Like most, I have a 60, but that's a newer club in the last few years. I have a 60 and a 54 now. But I never had a 60 until very recently. I have an affiliation with Ping, and their glide wedges are just so good. I actually am having a hard time getting down to 14 clubs. There's so many good clubs, but to me, there's a mentality that I'm close, therefore I should use my most lofted club. And that's a mentality that just kills people. I want you to be able to make a stroke motion as much as possible, but there are certainly times where you're going to have to go up and over and have to make more of a swinging pitch, but you don't want to have to take the largest swing you ever take, because if you miss it, it's going to break the windows in the clubhouse.
How about your take on this? And I love your use of the word insurance. I'm going to borrow that. He has insurance for the pitch and the chip stroke, and no matter how high you got to go. I feel like the more you can isolate excess wrist action, the more likely you're building in insurance to good contact. Do you agree or disagree?
I do agree. I definitely agree. And I'm not sure it's the most popular opinion. So chipping, there's not a ton of risk. I've seen good chippers that have a fair amount and some that have none. But I don't love that there's a message out there that in order to hit the ball high for a pitch shot, you have to hinge and you have to get a lot of wrist. That's just not true. I'm a big believer that if you have a relatively lofted club and you hit the ground with it, it's going to go high enough in most cases. And I'm not thrilled with adding a lot of moving parts, especially under pressure, because any golfer who gets nervous is going to tend to get tighter, and needing a lot of wrist hinge and release is really not likely. And there's a lot of myths out there that you have to use your wrists a lot to get the ball to go high is completely a myth, in my opinion.
The proof is in the pudding. And for every argument, we can find a statistic to massage our argument or find an example. But I counter often with folks. I'm like, I will throw two names at you, Steve Stricker
Yep.
and Zach Johnson. And they are magical with a wedge in hand. And they both hold the club differently. Zach, big, strong left hand grip. Steve is more neutral,
Mm-hmm.
very quiet wrists. And
Mm-hmm.
these guys at floating, spinning, whatever they want, with a very sort of sweeping action, slightly down because they lean left to your observation. But there's a whole lot of shenanigans with the wrist going on through the stroke.
Yeah, I mean it's super shallow. I mean, I love Steve's motion. It's amazing. And listen, not to say if you want to hit it super high, you can't, use some wrists and like thumbs up to thumbs up. And you're seeing like the pictures of the ball that are just kind of ridiculously sick, like Phil, and they have a ton of wrists. They under release and the club head passes the handle and the shaft's leaning backwards at impact. So they've got more loft and bounce than I'm ever going to need or want to use, because that would scare the heck out of me. So, you can kind of choose your level of risk.
I think you bring up such a good point there. Those guys, look, here's the argument. I call golf and I see them do it. They're playing on surfaces that are so firm and fast that their chip and run is running with a 56-degree wedge.
Right.
If we're playing on standard 11, 12 stimp greens, the ball's unlikely to run as far as you're going to see the guys on TV who are hitting that chip and run shot with a more lofted iron.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I thought it was fun when they played at Kiowa, because that was so much shaved area around the greens. And
The
you saw a
bug.
lot of the guys kind of bumping it into the hill before the green, like because they knew they had like that tabletop green. I love seeing when the PGA Tour players do, and the LPGA do things that like the average golfer should be doing. When they start hitting these like crazy risky shots, I go, oh gosh, that's gonna show up on my lesson tee next week. I gotta explain that one away.
Well, it's meaning more business to you. You're lining your pockets there with folks that are trying things that they couldn't really pull off.
Yeah, I'm good. Fortunately I have enough business with a lot of really nice people.
One more thing here, along these lines, and then I want to maybe do something on the green. You've talked about putting from off the green. For some reason, it's taboo. But the Texas wedge got the name for a reason. The folks in Texas back in the day used to putt from 40, 50 yards off the green because they could. Why aren't people trying that anymore?
Oh, no, it's funny. That's true. People will tend to be really adverse to it. I think what gets in the way is obviously anytime you have a longer putt or you're back off the green, you've got to be willing to make a bigger backstroke. And sometimes those backstrokes get big, and I feel like people have it in their head that when they're putting, that the putter head has to stay low to the ground on both sides of the ball. But what happens when you make a correct and larger putting stroke is the putter goes past its low point and then it starts to elevate naturally. And if I have a golfer who thinks the putter should be low, they're never willing to swing the putter back far enough to just allow the putter to fall, and it will automatically fall faster.
Yeah.
So I figured it out by accident almost. I had students who were like, we're not putting from here. So I said, okay, we'll chip. And their chips weren't good. So they were up on the putting green and they had their ball near the pin eventually. And I said, okay, I want you to putt back to the cart. So they both did. They both took these really big backstrokes and the ball ended up right by the cart. I said, and they didn't know. I kind of figured out in the middle. I'm like, okay, turn around from the ball by the cart, make the same size stroke you took, and they both of them went right by the pin.
That's brilliant.
So I feel like being willing to swing the putter back far enough gets in the way. And like, makes me a little crazy hearing golfers say, oh, I didn't hit it hard enough, whether they're off the green or on. Like 99% of the time, that's never why the ball comes up short. It's because the backstroke wasn't big enough. They didn't put enough gas in the tank. So I think it's just kind of the fast green curse. Golfers just aren't willing to take it back far enough.
I'm going to support your argument there for folks to say that with my daughter Isabel, when she was a little one, 5 or 6 or whatever, I taught her how to swing a golf club. She had 2 things to do. Number one, she had to clip the little legs out from underneath the golf ball on every swing. So it wasn't hit the ball, it was get the club underneath the ball, whether it was on a tee or not. And so she still talks about hitting the legs. And then the other thing was, I took her to a playground and I was like, we swung on the swing. She was little. So I said to her, tell me what you feel when you're on the swing. And she was like, it goes back and through the same. I'm like, yeah. I'm like, where's it the fastest? She goes, at the bottom. I'm like, what do you feel like at the bottom? She goes, I feel heavy. I'm like, and now I'm thinking she's hit it all. And I was about to give her my golf lesson. And she goes, and when I swing back too far, it wobbles. I'm like, now your golf swing needs to be the same way. If you watch her now, that club doesn't go past this at all. She'll turn, but the arms will never overrun. But when she's on the putting green, it's the same thing. Allow the mass of the head to propel the ball. It's powerful, isn't it?
Yes, when you start to understand the physics of it, it makes such a huge difference. And I'm like very logical and mathematical. So like when I can get it to make sense, it's like you can just swing the putter back the right length and let it just fall and the ball will go the right distance instead of having to add or subtract. That's what most good putters are doing.
Yeah. Was that guy said force was equal to mass times acceleration.
Yeah.
Get the mass, they think of the acceleration only. All right, they've hit a decent shot onto the green now for their third, but now they've got to make that putt that counts. What does Kellie Stenzel say in terms of, helping them deal with the pressure of that little must maker from 4 or 5 feet? The ones we all tend to want to miss, and they ruin scorecards.
Pressure.
Mm.
I think it's a bit of letting go. Like I should make this or I must make this. Anything that's result oriented is just kind of ruining. Like I'd like to make it, that would be nice, but I'd like to busy them with preparation, get a quick read, get a feel for how long the putt is, taking practice strokes, looking at the target and try to make the practice strokes real. And the target might be, if it's a downhill putt, the target might be short of the cup. If it's an uphill putt, the target might be past the cup. But I think once they set up and aim the putter face well, and I'm pretty picky about lower body staying pretty steady. I don't like to see a lot of head motion or knee motion, but all they can really do is just try to hit the ball solidly in the middle of the putter face and roll it well. If you aim it well and you somewhat control distance and you just try to hit it solidly, it's going to go in a lot more often than if you're trying to make it go in.
Isn't it curious to you how many golfers you see daily who actually misstrike the putter? And I'm going to toss a Jack Nicklaus-ism at you. He said that, he eventually learned after 30 something years that the air provides less resistance than the grass. So hit the ball higher. But a putt's spending time on the ground all the time. So there's constant friction from when it leaves the putter face. So the argument then I make is that contact with the putter is equally as important as any other club in the bag.
Yes, if you hit the putter off center, it twists.
Mm-hmm.
And especially like on a long putt, maybe the standards are different. You're just trying to get it close. But on those shorter putts where it would be nice if it went in, if you don't hit the ball relatively centered in your putter face, then it's not going to tend to go because that putter face is going to twist. It's not going to go where you're aiming.
Yeah, it's amazing. Week in and week out, I'm fortunate to look into players' bags on the tour, and you can see the putters that have been in there for a while. They've actually got a wear mark on the face in the sweet spot, how they've hit this thing there every single time.
I've seen that. That's amazing.
Okay, Ducks, that's helping the short game. Folks can go and find the video series. How many segments are in the series of that one? Do you know off the top of your head?
I have no idea. They kind of came out of the books. So when I first wrote the books, and I wrote three books, there just aren't a lot of publishers anymore. And when I wrote the three books, I said I wasn't going to write anymore until I had something new to say. And, and that kind of happened. I did have some new things to say. So the videos kind of came out of that. So to me, it's just kind of everything from definitions to shots to shot selection. And, I'm really happy with how they came out.
Well worth it. Look, you're hearing over here, folks. Go check it out. Okay, the golf swing for a lifetime. I need 2 takes, please. Self-serving, I guess, but also for the folks around the world, please.
A lot of my writing and filming has been kind of for the newer golfer who's a bit forgotten. And they are directed toward women, but like I said before, they really can apply to all golfers. And I've got some kind of funny stories with that. But women are different. Like, we don't tend to just dive right in and grab the bucket of balls and just swing and not care when we miss it. We kind of generally like to know what we're doing. And if we start to miss it, we'll go into almost like a self-protect mode. Like, well, I'm not good, so therefore I'm not going to play, or I'll go do something that I can do. So I'm really, really picky on setups. I'm really picky that a grip is correct. Because if you hold the club correctly in the fingers and in the position that is specific to you, because everybody's a little bit different, the club face will come in really straight and square, and the ball will try to go straight. And then my really picky thing is posture. When a golf posture is good and a golfer is bent forward and hands hang right below their shoulders, and a little bit more important for women because center of gravities tend to be more rear-endish and they've got to be a little differently balanced, the ball will just get in the way. So when I have a new golfer, I always, like a brand new golfer, I get their grip correct. I make sure their posture is good, and I bring the ball to them. I make sure they're perfect. I know they can already clip the tee. I've got it on a tee to start, and I just bring the ball to them, and I'm like, okay, just clip the tee, and they hit the ball. And then once you can just hit the ball and it goes, then golf is fun. That bumper sticker that says what it is, a bad day on the golf course is better than a good day at work. That is not true. If you don't hit it, golf is just not that fun. So to answer your question, if a setup is good, the golf ball will just get in the way. And that's really important.
Let's drill down on this because most golfers, even elite golfers, I think we can get a bit too tied up in, what we're supposed to do. And then you hit a bad shot and you're like, well, I didn't do this and I didn't do that. But the skinny of it, the nuts and bolts, says that it's a misaligned club face. And so, but people thinking about it, they lifted their head or they're doing this or they're doing that. Well, it's just the face that wasn't square to your grip anecdote.
No, absolutely. I mean, listen, and everybody has a grip that's correct for them, but they're different people every day. So like I used to joke when I worked in the Hamptons and everybody come out on Friday and they'd been working a busy week and they were all a little wound up. And I had to almost take their grip and make it a little stronger just to offset some of the tension. And then by the time Sunday came around and they were a little more relaxed and they had a weekend away from the office, I could take the grip and make it a little more neutral. So they also really need to understand, like, part of the reason why you warm up and you see what the golf is giving you that day is to understand like little adjustments that you can make to make the face square. You don't have to slice the ball all day long. Please get rid of it.
I have seen countless golfers where they've been for their lesson with Kellie Stenzel. And as you talk about this, I can hear the Mike Adams influence, because he talks about the how you hold the club a lot.
Mhm.
They might have their hands in good position, but that club face is so misappropriated and misaligned, and then they're very worried about their body alignment. But the club face is misaligned to how their hands are sitting. You see that often? Because I think it's overlooked by many folks.
Yeah, it's so funny to say that. Most grips, physical grips on the club, or most club shafts have some type of marking on it that shows when this club is straight or sitting centered. Like a lot of grips have this little tiny tick mark at the bottom. And I am endlessly amazed when I show golfers that little tick mark. You're like, I mean, good golfers, like, I never knew that was there. Like, so yeah, so like setting the club squarely sounds really easy to do. There's probably a mark on your grip of your club somewhere, but many, many golfers are just not even aware of it.
The optics of the club head too, because folks will focus on the top line of the iron, which is angled away from you, and they'll try and get that thing perpendicular to themselves, and that's got the club face way closed. Then they're reacting from there.
It's so funny to say that. When I have golfers will try to use the top line to aim, like especially when you get into the more lofted clubs like a 5 hybrid or a 7 wood. And I kind of half jokingly will ask them, is your desk really neat? And they look at me like, what, are you crazy? They're like, yes, because my neat desk people, my pictures have to be hanging perfectly on the wall people. They almost always try to put that top line perpendicular, which is like dead closed. And when you set the club properly, it just looks so, they'll call it open, but I'm like, lofted is open. Look, lofted looks open. So yeah, it's amazing, but it's definitely my like neat desk people that love to put that top line perpendicular.
I've seen elite golfers that have missed stuff like that,
Oh,
because
I bet.
it's it's amazing to me. I've got Bobby Jones is like my hero from books in the back of my head always, where he goes, the simplest golf lessons are the ones most easily forgotten. And the better the player becomes, the more they think the problem is intricate. But your point is so well founded, where just a slightly crooked club face, then we kind of engineer ourselves around this to somehow make the ball go where we want it to go. And then you're creating bad swing habits.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I mean, like, think of the complication of the game, though. Like, every club is a different length in most cases. Every club is a different loft. The grip is circular. So it's not like whoever invented this made this like as easy as it could be. They like, what were they thinking? That's challenging.
It really is. Okay, we've talked about the grip and the club face. I just want your take on the posture, and then build on that with ball position too, because you're right. I see countless folks that are, most folks nowadays just kind of droop their chest over the golf ball because we're all so sedentary and desk bound. And you made such a wonderful quip about the center of mass or the center of gravity. So talk about what you like to see in posture at setup, please.
I mean, I like Justin Thomas. Like I look at his posture and when you watch golfers on TV, like he just kind of pops to mind. Like, and everybody's built differently. And obviously there's some limitations. So not everybody's going to look like him, but in my ideal world, if I can get a golfer bent from their hips and spine relatively straight, so that, their chin can be up and there's a place for their shoulders to pass underneath. But if you can get the hands to hang straight line directly below the shoulders, kind of your arms truly, truly hanging, then they will return to where they hang.
Yeah.
And once golfers understand hands hanging below shoulders, and they can kind of identify, and I ask golfers all the time, how far is it from your hands to your thighs when you're hitting the middle of the club face? And some people say like 5 inches, 6 inches, a foot. Everybody, sees it differently, and everybody might be different. But once they can determine that best distance between their hands and their thighs for them, they can apply that across the board from their sand wedge to their 3-wood.
Mhm.
And if they can get into the same posture with every club, it is just so much easier to find the middle of the club face. And I think where a lot of golfers get confused is they're trying to figure out how far to stand from the ball. And once again, you're a different distance from the golf ball with every club. So students will ask me, am I too close to the ball? Am I too far from the ball? And I'm like, well, I'm not really going to answer that, but I want you to look from your hands to your thighs,
Yeah.
because that will be, they can correct themselves. And that's like an aha moment in a lot of cases.
Golly, it is. And I'm sure you got a lot of folks thinking, I want to build on that then, because that's the ball just kind of let's say it's underneath your heart in relation to you. Do you like the ball position to float? Or do you like players to play from one position and kind of adjust themselves to it?
Now, listen, everybody's different. And I would say, like, for kind of an average, recreational country club golfer, if the ball is on the ground, so pretty much everything except for your driver,
Mhm.
And a greenside bunker shot, I like to see the club very centered in the body.
Right. Mhm.
So place the club behind the ball and then center the club in the body. Driver and greenside sand, that's when I want to see the ball forward. Driver so that they can get shoulder tilt, and greenside bunker so that they can hit the sand first. Now, if I've got a really good player, a tour player, and or a low handicap golfer, and they've got a ton of lateral motion forward, then I do like to see like the longer irons, hybrids and fairway woods slightly forward. But most golfers club pretty centered, ball on the ground.
Perfect. That's at the start. The swing hasn't happened yet. Your series is building a golf swing for a lifetime. I want to ask you this question. In your experiences, and they have been rampant, you've got thousands upon thousands. What is the biggest swing myth you encounter? Like what's that bit of advice regarding the golf swing that you feel like it's ruined more golfers than it's helped them? Is there such a thing?
Oh gosh, I feel like there's so many. I mean, like, you lifted your head that comes to mind, but I'll kind of twist it and like kind of bring it back to the positive. Like, what are the things that golfers could do to make golf more simple? So, like, once a golfer's set up well, if they swing their arms back and they just keep their lead underarm close to their chest. So, if it's a right-handed golfer, kind of their left underarm, if they kept it pretty close to their chest and swung their arms back, that would do a lot of really good things. That would stabilize the club face. It would probably keep it pretty perpendicular to a curving path, and it would make shoulders turn. So, and it also is going to tend to change swing path based upon the length of the club. So it's like one nice little simple thing that would do a lot for a backswing.
I love that. I've got to ask it because you're a lady, so you are experienced enough to answer the question, and I think you know where I'm going. Because
Yep.
as a male golf teacher, I've seen tons of club lady golfers. I've taught a couple in the LET, and we have the booby issue. Would
Yep.
you advise, please, for the women golfers listening, how to deal with this?
Yeah, no, and it's funny because I do a lot of golf schools with Stephanie Shaw down at Ocean Reef, and we tend to do ladies golf schools. So it's always a question that if we don't get asked, we answer it. Um, you know, Listen, there are some men with some big chests too. So, it's not always just the women, but we'll go with it.
Uh-huh.
So, if you've got a larger chest, number one, if you bend forward a little more, it's going to get them out of the way a little bit. Just let your arms hang and then take them with you. So when you swing back, take them with you. And when you swing through, take them with you. So a little more bow if you're particularly large, but as you turn back and through, bring them both ways.
Would almost advocate that for everybody listening to this, a little more bow, as you say, or a bit more bending from the hips is not too bad a thing because most folks, again, their pelvis is dead in the water underneath them and they're just hunching over in their chests. And so as a result, their rotation in the upper body's compromised. And then there's like, well, folks are telling them you're not turning enough. Would you agree?
Yeah, well, and listen, this is really like one of my things that makes me a little crazy. If a golfer's not bent forward correctly, their weight, women in particular, are if they're not bent forward enough and their weight's in their heels, as soon as they make a good backswing and they curve and they turn, they're going to lose their balance. They're going to stand up and they're going to top the heck out of it. And they're probably only going to do that once or twice. So now they're going to stop turning, which is two wrongs trying to make a right.
Mhm.
So like posture certainly enables motion, and kind of going back to your question. Yeah. If you've got a larger chest, you've got to bend forward and get them out of the way a little bit.
Kellie, this has been so cool. I could keep you here forever, but I know there are probably people on the lesson tee waiting for you. We're going to tell people to go and find where they can find the books, and of course Amazon for the two video series. Where can they find the books, and what are the books' names, please?
The Women's Guide to Golf series, the Women's Guide to Golf, a handbook for beginners, Women's Guide to Consistent Golf, and Women's Guide to Lower Scores. And probably the best place to find is on Amazon. It's probably the easiest place to find them.
I want to do this. Even though the book's titles, gentlemen, say Women's Guide to Golf, a lot of these tips are unisex, or a lot of these insights are applicable to men and women. You agree with me? You're the expert.
Yeah, I was a quick story. I got this note from some gentleman I didn't even know. It was like 3 pages handwritten. It was like one of the best things ever. And the story was he had played golf and he was just so bad he kind of gave up golf. And he was going through his wife's drawers and cleaning out, and he found one of my books and he read it and he said, I can do that. And he took it to the range and he did all this stuff. And he got not only playing better, but playing pretty well, and was so happy to play golf again. Number one, he wrote me this note, which just made me beyond happy. But then he bought his wife a golf cart. So yeah. So listen, it's, there's a few things that are specific to women, but it's also just kind of good basic fundamentals, and hopefully in a way that's really understandable and not complicated.
I can see series 2 where you have women's, but you just cross out the WO for the men because a lot of
Yeah.
work both ways. That's awesome. What about website, social media? Folks want to take lessons from you. What do they do?
Yeah, I'm down here in South Florida for the winter. I live in the Palm Beach area. I have a website, KellieStenzelGolf.com. My name is Kelly with an IE. And I'm teaching down in Palm Beach and down at Boca Hotel. And, would love to have golfers come down and, we can design golf schools, bring your group, or just kind of one-on-one lessons. And kind of looking forward to a nice busy winter down here.
You're a legend. I so appreciate you joining us and sharing all of your insights with our audience. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mark. And thanks for all you do for the game. It's great.